business is difficult. But a lot of people don't. They don't realise that life is difficult. They get all stressed out because things go wrong. Well, things go wrong every day. They always have gone wrong and they always will go wrong. But that's the normal. It's normal for things to go wrong. You're alive when things go wrong. And if you accept that business is difficult, it's no longer difficult anymore. And if you ever meet somebody who sails through life without any setbacks, there's something missing in them, a lack of sympathy, a lack of empathy. To be part of the human race, you have to have suffered. Now, finally, you may have read in 2008, and this proves to you that life is totally unpredictable, business is totally unpredictable. I got a phone call from the Sunday Times, and they said, your old company, Signet, have got a new chairman, and they're going to now list, they've made a decision, they're going to list on the US stock market because they're doing very well in the US, not so well in the UK. I said, if they do that, they will dump their UK division, which they've sold Watch to Switzerland already, but they've just left with Ernest Jones and H. Samuel. And if they go to America, they will just dump those two divisions. She says, well, if they dump them, would you be interested in buying them? And I had no thought of that, but I thought I'd get a bit of publicity for my website, Gerald Online. And she says, I know that Gerald Online's doing well, but it's £350 million deal. Have you got that sort of dosh? And I said, well, no, I haven't got it, no, but I could get it. And she says, where would you get it? I said, a bank probably, that's best bet. She says, well, what bank? And I'm reading at the time that the Royal Bank of Scotland are doing a lot of deals, in retail particularly. And I thought I'd throw that name into the pot because it's a credible name. And I said, probably, I made it up obviously, Royal Bank of Scotland will probably lend me the money. I put the phone down. On the Sunday, the headline of the Sunday Times business section is Ratner and the Royal Bank of Scotland are bidding £350 million for the UK division of Signet. She jumped the gun a little bit. On the Monday, I got a phone call from the Royal Bank of Scotland, and I said, hello, and they said, we've read this article with interest, but no one in the organisation knows anything about it. Could you give us the name of an executive that you're dealing with? I said, look, I'm sorry, I made the whole thing up. And they said, oh, well, don't worry about that. We'll still lend you the money, which gives you some indication of the Royal Bank of Scotland's lending policy in 2008. But unfortunately, when I made the offer, the new chairman turned it down straight away, which would have been a nice ending to my book if I would have pulled that off. Now, once again, to prove that you can never predict the future, last week I got a phone call from Sky TV. And I said, are you doing, because they're the people who did this 50 worst mistakes of all time. I said, are you doing the programme again? Have I won again? Would you like me to introduce it? Because last time they actually asked me to introduce the show, like going to your own gallows. They said, no, 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 you've turned your fortunes around. We'd like you to do a programme helping companies out of difficulty, like a Gordon Ramsay's type kitchen thing. I said, well, hasn't that been done to death? There's so many programmes on that. They said, well, we think this will work, you know, because there's a lot of businesses in difficulty. You go in and help and stuff, you do mentoring and all that. So I said, well, what's it going to be on? They said, oh, we've got a new channel, Sky something or other, showcase. I mean, it's really good. So I turn it on, because I only watch Sky Sports. I've never watched these programmes before. And it's complete and utter rubbish. I shouldn't really say that. I should learn my lesson. But never mind, it was rubbish, to be fair. And because it was reality stuff, which I hate, and bloody quiz programmes, which I hate even more. But it doesn't really matter what I like or hate. But anyway, so, and it's that, and it's adverts that go on for 7 minutes, which is my worst hate of all time. When you get to my age, you become very grumpy and you hate everything. So I'm watching this and I think, oh no, I don't fancy this at all. I phoned them up, I said, do you know something? I have got some dignity left. I'm not doing that programme on that stupid channel. And then they said how much they were paying me. And I said, okay, I'll do it. You know, because you can't afford dignity, really, can you, at the moment, with the cost of living crisis. So I went home and I told my wife that I'm going to be on TV with my own show. It's yesterday. And she said, don't do it. I said, why? She said, because you'll say something stupid and you'll wreck your new business just like you wrecked your old business. She always builds me up like that. And she says, what will you do then? You'll be lying in bed watching Countdown again. What will you do? We'll be skint. What will you do then? And I said to her that I will just start all over again. Thanks a lot. Thank you. 2,500 shops. Wow. 1,000 shops in America. And we were one of the few retailers who succeeded on that side of the Atlantic. Simply because we actually didn't transport our formula however successful it was in the UK, which is the mistake that a lot of retailers do, because it's a totally different market out there. Although they speak the same language, they might as well live in igloos, the difference in what it was. Not one line did we sell out there that we sold in the UK. But so yeah, we were heading, as I said, for £200 million profit in 1992. That's what the brokers were going for. We'd just announced 125 million the year before. We had employed 27,000 people, more than the Royal Navy, so it was quite a lot. And they were going for 200 million, which you think about it is 32 years ago, is probably $1 billion profit. And in retail, there isn't any retailer that's making that. So we were really profitable. We were taking more money per square foot than any other retailer. But nobody talks about this because it's like saying the Titanic had hundreds of miles of pleasurable sailing before it hit the iceberg. They only talk about the iceberg, but it was hugely successful. And it came about because it was a small family business, which was just the Ratners, losing 35,000 a year in the early 80s, and making the same mistake that every jeweller was making, that had the perception that to be successful as a jeweller, you had to be very prestigious. You had to look like a bank and look very expensive and sell very expensive. But that went completely against the demographics at the time in the mid-80s, which were the young people between the 16s and 24s had the disposable cash. And they were buying stuff in Dixon's and Next and British Home Stores and Marks, because they were selling cheaper stuff. And we were too expensive, we were doing badly. So very simply, I discovered a jeweller up in Newcastle who was making a fortune selling, instead of selling expensive diamond rings and average ticket price of £200 or £300, he was playing pop music. Everything was reduced. He had sandwich boards outside. He was doing everything that the jewellers hated, and he was making a fortune. So I basically copied him, and everything was discounted. We got rid of all the doors to get rid of the threshold barrier, and we took the diamond rings out the front window. We put earrings that were, as you say, 99p, and it was phenomenally successful. It was so successful that it hit our competitors, and it enabled me to make an acquisition, which was the quantum leap, from Ratner's to buy H. Samuel, which at the time was 3 times our size. They had 450 shops, we had 150. And they had a better name and they had better locations, bigger shops, and it was a fantastic deal. And then we turned H. Samuel into exactly what we were, with cheaper stuff, and we had queues a mile long at Christmas in those shops, and that enabled us to buy Ernest Jones, Leslie Davis watch in Switzerland, and it took us to 50% of the jewellery market because there was nobody to compete with us. And we were actually, in 1991, when I did that speech, we were sailing through the recession, unlike any other retailer. But, so, unfortunately, from that day onwards, it then went in complete reverse.
And how did you acquire the knowledge to be able to do what you did? Did you have a good education? Were you entrepreneurial and just learned through the family? Or, because getting to that level and understanding those numbers and understanding how to acquire businesses and, to think that big that you're just going to, buy a group and bolt it into your business. How do you get that level of experience so you feel confident in being able to make those quantum leaps?
Well, as I said, I do a fair bit of mentoring, and people say to me, they keep asking, what is the secret of building a successful business? Because you've built 3 or 4. And I say there is no secret in it, because if there was a secret, we'd all do it. But the one thing that has made me successful in those businesses is learning from my mistakes. Mm-hmm. And to answer your question, I went into that business, in the family business, because I came bottom at school, 33rd out of 33, and I was expelled which in those days they could expel you for stupidity. I know they wouldn't do it today, they'd say you've got something wrong with you, but they actually said they expelled me for coming last, which actually did me a bit of good because, you know, it made me want to prove to everybody that I wasn't that idiot. But anyway, I went into the shop at the age of 15, didn't go to any university, obviously I couldn't, and I would feel that the most successful people in retail, I don't know about other businesses, but it probably applies the same, are people that have started at the bottom, that have learnt the ropes. I would never employ anybody. Well, I did once, a financial director who never worked in the shop, and I could see that he didn't know anything about the business. You have to work in the shop, you have to start at the bottom. I spoke to this restaurant bloke who owns a restaurant. He says he'd rather have somebody who puts the bins out at 2 o'clock in the morning become a future executive than somebody who swans in from university with no work ethic. So, sorry, it's a bit of a rant, but I do feel that you have to start from the bottom and you learn it that way and you go upwards. And for years, I could see how successful Ratner's was in the early days, and then how unsuccessful, clearly, that they were going down the wrong track. By becoming very expensive and spending more money on the shops and being pressured. So I could see that that was the wrong way to do it, and I could see that learning from doing it wrong, if you do exactly the opposite, it's going to work. So that was the turning point.
Okay, amazing. Now, you know, just watching the video and hearing what you said, you know, obviously it wasn't great, but it seems like
it's a bit of an understatement.
It seems like you got in my opinion, a very, very hard time off the back of what was said. And, you know, these newspapers picking it up, and as you said, day after day after day, just continuing to hammer you. Did you pee somebody off at one of the newspapers, or why did they have it in for you? Why didn't they just let it go? And why do you think it got picked up and it was made such a big thing? What was the event as well, actually?
Right, so what the event was the Institute of Directors annual conference, which is held at the Albert Hall. It has held to this day at the Albert Hall in front of 6,000 people. Other speakers on the day was President de Klerk of South Africa, who talked about how he was going to end apartheid. You'd think that would have made the front pages the next day, but it wasn't, it was me. Norman Lamont, the Chancellor. It was a big event, and I was a bit nervous about it. Now, I had to give a copy, as we all did, of our speech in advance to the press. That was what was agreed. So all this talk about I did this behind my customers' backs and just to a business audience and made fun of my customers behind them, just rubbish, because I gave a copy of the speech to all the press. But there was one journalist who worked for the Daily Mirror who is, you're right, he had it in for me. And the reason he did that was because he said that I had fired his niece. Now, as I said, I employed 27,000 people. I never had the pleasure of meeting his niece, but he told his niece, I only found this out about 10 years ago, he told his niece that he would do me in, he would find a reason to bring me down. And of course he did. And I'm not saying, well, it's not my fault, because I should never have made the joke about the sherry decanter. I should never use the word crap. But in that same speech, I actually said that all the jewellery we sell, if you listen to the whole thing on YouTube, all the jewellery we sell is the highest quality, sold by highly trained staff in very nice shops. But we have this one product, you know, that we acquired when we bought H. Samuel, which I don't particularly like, but it keeps selling. Anyway, I always went on about that. Anyway, because they're disingenuous, the press, as they are, and they said that I said it about all my jewellery. All my jewellery's crap, and my reason for being successful is selling crap. Everything. And to this day, on Twitter, everybody says he's the guy that called all his jewellery crap, which is it's not true. I call one product crap, but there's no point in me being bitter and going around being one of these people that you hear on Radio 5 Live who's had taken a short straw and, you know, had a hard deal and is miserable, because I am that person, but it won't get me any good I'm not that person really. I'm a very cheerful person, and I think that you have to be that, because you don't get any sympathy out of it. Everyone, it's a lot of success and failure to do with luck. And I was unlucky. I've been lucky but you know, I've got no complaints. And when I said earlier in the speech that the trick is in life is to turn a curse into a blessing, that is so true, because you begin to love the actual thing that really hurt you, because it defines you, it's part of you.